and I will make sure the quality is good. Yes.
Yep.
All right, you all are live.
All right. We are here in Nashville, Tennessee, which is sister of Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. Can you tell us a bit about Jennifer and Adrianna?
Yeah. Um, Obviously, Jennifer and Adriana have been missing for 20 years. Whenever they went missing, Jennifer was 21 and Adriana was just 2. Jennifer's my oldest sister, and she is one of 6. So there's 3 on my mom's side, and she's one of those 3, and then she has 3 other sisters on her dad's side of the family. Uh,
Can you tell us about her disappearance?
yes, would love to. Um, Jennifer and Adriana vanished on March 25th, 2004. There were some events taking place that week that uh, kind of led us to believe that she didn't leave of her own accord. But March 25th was the last day that she spoke to anyone in our family. And it was very unusual for her to go even one day, part of a day, without speaking to someone in our family. And she was in pretty much constant contact with my mom, I have another sister, my middle sister, between Jennifer and I, her grandmother, and her mom and dad, my aunt, every day. And she lived at the time with her boyfriend and his parents. They had been dating for just under a year, probably about 9 months at the time of their disappearance. And while living there, I guess things became kind of stressful and tense, just all being under one roof, like that can sometimes be. Um, but the week of their disappearance, the baby was sick and she had like some respiratory stuff going on, but some other things too that Jennifer had taken her to the pediatrician and to the ER for. She had, went to the emergency room for uh, burning and hurting whenever she went to the bathroom.
Make sure it's still on. Because I'm connected to their Wi-Fi. Might have gone out.
And do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, just hold on a second. Yeah, because it went out on my phone, but it might have been just mine. What's your sound? Sorry.
So we're still.
Yep, you're still good. Sorry.
So Jennifer had taken Adriana to the emergency room in Springfield, Northwest Hospital that Monday. So that would have been like the 21st or 22nd, just off the top of my head. And Adriana was saying it hurt whenever she went to the bathroom, whenever she went pee, and of course she was still in diapers. And so she would just cry, right? So everyone in the house was annoyed at her crying, especially his parents. And so that was happening earlier on in the week, and there was just tension all in all. And then my mom talked to Jennifer on Wednesday, March 24th, like kind of later in the evening around bedtime. And there was arguing going on in the background. She could hear arguing and people raising their voices in the background. And my mom just kind of asked my sister, what's going on? And she said, well, Joey, that's my sister's then boyfriend. His name's Joey Benton. And she said, he's in the other room. Adriana, we're trying to sleep train her. They had just moved her into like a little toddler bed, trying to teach her to sleep in her bed. And she was like, he's in there with Adriana. Joey's mom is going on at me. She's been going on at me all night. She's been saying how I'm not a good mom. I'm unfit to be a mother. She threw our dinner out the back door that they had and said, go eat it off the ground before the dogs do. So she was just kind of at Jennifer all night. And the mom's like, well, what about his dad? His dad lived there too. And she said that his dad was normally nice to her, but that even that night he had gotten in her face too. So this was on Wednesday, the night before all contact stopped on Thursday. And then on Thursday morning, my mom ended that conversation on Wednesday and was like, okay, y'all go get the baby. It's not a good night to sleep train. Just go to bed, everyone sleep on it, calm down, call me tomorrow. And she said, okay. And then she never called mom. And on Thursday morning, my sister didn't have a phone of her own. So that's important for our case, important case detail. She was using his family's home phone to make contact, or he had a cell phone that was through his parents' plan that she would use sometimes to get upset with her for using his minutes and stuff because they have minutes back home. Some people still do this. But that day she had used the home phone to call her dad, which was unusual for her because she knew he was working. She wouldn't normally call him during the day, but that day she called her dad, and he lives in Manchester, Tennessee, which Springfield and Manchester, I guess an hour and a half apart, maybe close to 2 hours. But it's south of Nashville, but they were very close, very, very close. She looked just like him, and she was a daddy's girl, even though she lived with me and my mom her entire life. I mean, they were very close. And so she was calling him, I guess, like to air her frustration and vent, like about the night before. And she told him about all the arguing and everything. And her dad actually heard while they were on the phone, he remembers and recalls like the TV playing in the background. You can hear Adrianna, like saying her little words. She's just not learning to talk and everything, and playing and watching cartoons. And then he also heard someone in the house with my sister that day. And as far as he can recall, it sounded like a woman's voice. There was only one woman who lived in the house other than my sister, and that was Joey's mother, Cindy. And so she spoke with her dad on the phone, and one of the things that he remembers is her saying, "I'm scared." Dad said, "What?" And she said, "Joey's mom, she's acting weird, she's acting strange." And he said, "Well, why don't you have your mom or like your granny or someone come get you?" Because we all lived within like a 20-minute drive of where she was staying, his parents' house. And she said, "No, Joey's on his way home, we're going to go on a picnic." And he's like, well, all right, we'll keep you posted with everything. They made plans for her to come see him the following weekend. And she never did. That was the last time he spoke with Jennifer. And she made one other call in the afternoon, and that was to my aunt. My aunt lived about 5 minutes around the corner. And my sister actually lived with my aunt some and met Joey through my cousin, my aunt's son, because they were friends. Joey and my cousin were friends. And that's how Joey and Jennifer met the summer before they disappeared. And she lived right around the corner. She had taken Jennifer and Adrianna to the ER earlier that week because they were the closest. She could get there the quickest, but she called my aunt around 1 o'clock Thursday, March 25th, very brief phone call. My aunt remembers going into a job interview, and that's why it was so short. But Jennifer started to get into all the drama from the night before and fighting and everything. And it's like, I've got to go into my interview. And she's like, but if you need to come here, I'm going to leave it to me out for you. Out back on the deck, if you need to come here. So my sister's like, all right, I'll talk to you later. And that was the last phone call that she made. So that was her last contact with anyone. Really the last contact with anyone ever. As far as was concerned, other than her both parents and where their story is.
Sorry, okay.
That was a lot.
Yeah, when did you find out that she was missing? Or the family or anyone in the family?
Well, the last contact obviously was Thursday, but when I say Jennifer talked to someone every day, I mean, that was the truth. Sometimes multiple times a day. And so my mom was kind of like waiting for her call on Thursday, but she didn't hear from her. But she was like, okay, maybe they're trying to make up, and things are better now. Didn't think anything about it. And Friday rolled around, my mom went to work, and I was 16 at the time. So this is all by way of me remembering things from the adults in my family, right? I don't remember much. My memory is awful because due to all of this. But my mom remembers going to work that day on that Friday and just thinking about Jennifer all day long. My mom wasn't allowed to have her phone then. But whenever she got off work, other family members started to call my mom. Have you heard from Jennifer? I heard from her. There was fighting going on, that Jennifer had mentioned to my aunt, to her dad, and no one had heard from her. And Jennifer's dad's mom, her Granny Wix, if anyone looks into her case, we refer to her by that. She was very close with Granny Wix. Granny Wix lived like 15 minutes away. Jennifer lived with her part of the time the summer before when she met with Joey because we lived out of state. And Granny Wicks called my mom and was like, Kathy, it's my mom. She said, Kathy, something's wrong. Jennifer's missing. No one can find her. No one can get in touch with her. At this point, everyone starts like coming to my house, driving around looking for her. And face it, we lived in a very small town. Springfield is bigger than Cross Plains, but the Benton family and where Jennifer lived at the time was right on the line of Springfield and Cross Plains. So if you look into our case, it's going to say Springfield, sometimes it's going to say Cross Plains because my family lived in Cross Plains, but their address at the time they disappeared was Springfield. And Robertson County is the agency, their sheriff's department holds our case, which is in Springfield. And so being that we come from this super small town in Cross Plains, I'm talking like 1,300 people in 2004. There was one blinking red light in our town. There was one grocery store. It was a food value back then. Everyone knew everybody. So everyone's driving around, looking around all these places. She could be nowhere, pretty much. She had just a handful of friends that she would actually be with or call. We started reaching out to everyone. No one had heard from her. At the same time, we're calling the Benton family. We're calling their home phone. We're calling his cell phone. They're not picking up. No one is responding. And so that's about the time my family was like, something's wrong. Yeah. So, I mean, we are looking for her all over Friday into the early morning. Everyone's at the house. No one's sleeping, panicking. So Friday evening, I believe, is whenever we get in touch with Joey finally. And he and his dad, there's two ways that we get in contact with him. He and his dad actually drive over to my aunt's house because they kind of had, I would say, the closest relationship and knew where my aunt lived because their sons are friends. But he and his dad went over to my aunt's house to drop off her income tax refund. And my sister had it deposited to his parents' account. It was only like $500, but that was a lot for her. Young single mom on WIC, food stamps. $500 is a lot. And especially with no job, she, and I guess I'll address this because people like to say being a stay-at-home mom is a job. Yeah, it's a job, but I mean, when I refer to that in our case, I mean paid employment. Right. Okay. So they came over to give her income tax refund, her $500, because they heard that we were looking for her. But my middle sister Heather, also got in touch with Joey on his cell phone in the middle of the night. I don't remember exactly what time. He finally answered his phone and he said that they had broken up and he had dropped her off at the gas station in Cross Plains at the interstate. And he doesn't know where she is.
And what day did it say that you did that?
Thursday, March 25th. So, which would make sense. That's the last time anyone in our family had heard from her. So we're like, okay, well, who picked her up then? Yeah. And he didn't give us any details. He wouldn't, he didn't tell us this is the car that picked her, this is who she was with, and this is the time. So he was very short with us. We broke up. I don't know where she is. Find her yourself, So there was no kind of like concern on his part at that point. It was just I'm just going to tell them something so they leave me alone. But he and his dad did go over to my aunt's house that Friday evening. So that's March 26th. Whenever they found out we were calling around looking for her. And I can go into, if you like, what their story is.
Yep, go right ahead.
If that's cool, because it kind of ties in with the Friday, March 26th and the income tax refund.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Yep.
So we reported Jennifer and Adrianna missing on Saturday. So the last point of contact with anyone in our family was Thursday. And according to the Benton family, their last point of contact was Friday morning. Because he says after they got into an argument, he came home from work that day. They got into an argument, decided to break up. And after this breakup, Jennifer says, take me into Cross Plains. And for whatever reason, he doesn't know, but he says he just pacified her and did what she asked him to. And he drove her and the baby without any of their belongings into Cross Plains, that they stopped at the Food Value grocery store. And it was about 8:30, close to 9 o'clock at night. And he says Jennifer got out, went inside, and he presumes to make a phone call. This is this very detailed story, which the details kind of unfolded a little bit at a time, but I'm just giving it to you all in one full sweep. So he comes forward and gives these statements to law enforcement over time. He says that she got out, went in. There were 3 people at the Food Value that night. The supervisor, who my family knows very well. And then there was a bagger and a cashier. None of those 3 people saw Jennifer or Adrianna or Joey that night. So he says she comes out of the grocery store, and that grocery store is right in the heart of Cross Plains, maybe like a 10-minute drive from his house. Okay. So we're coming from Springfield into Cross Plains. We're getting closer to I-65, the interstate, where he says that he dropped them off. So they stop at that Food Value, and then she gets back in the car and says, take me to the Exxon at the interstate. There's only one Exxon gas station in Cross Plains. There are 3 gas stations total. All 3 of them sit right at the interstate. 2 of them are on the Cross Plains side. One of them's on the other. The Exxon is the one sitting closest to the interstate. And he says that they pull up, and this is where his story starts changing. In the police report, it says that he got out, and Jennifer got into the car of some unknown individuals of this white 4-door Mustang or Camaro. And the make and model of the car changes a few times during his first statement with law enforcement. So that was the first thing that he said. Over time, it switched to he let Jennifer and Adrianna out at this Exxon gas station, and he drove right across the street to this church parking lot. That kind of had a good view of the front of this Exxon gas station. And he sat and waited until this car pulled up. She got into it, and he didn't see who was driving it, how many people were in the car, and he left conveniently before he saw which direction they went. Okay. So he did tell my aunt at one point in time, it may or may not have been that Friday that he and his dad, March 26th, stopped by my aunt's house, that those individuals could be a couple friends of Jennifer's. Their names were Jerry and Helga. And we reached out to them. They showed up at our house on Saturday morning and said, no, that's not true. He said that his line was something wrong. So that even further added to our panic, right? So the car has always been kind of like the center point of one detail in our case that he messed up and fumbled around in his statement that people get upset over. And rightfully so, because it's a detail that I guess he didn't have everything together yet.
Does he do cars?
Because he owned 2 Mustangs at the time. And I won't say that every male knows cars, because they don't. But most people know that those older Mustangs and Camaros, they come in board wash. I think like they just came out with a four-door Mustang like this year or something, somewhere wrote the other day. But in 2004, they didn't exist. And he owned a couple of them. They were sitting in his yard at the time the girls disappeared. And so he knew that. And so in his original statement, it was written down in the police report. And that original officer who took that statement was fired for supposedly misquoting him. Yeah. So that statement ended up being changed to just a white four-door sedan, which I don't know if y'all know, maybe you do because you cover a lot of cases, but it's one of the most common cars that drives on roads. Yeah. So very convenient detail to the story. A lot of people in our case think that when they think about Jennifer and Adrianna and the story of how they disappeared, it ends there at the gas station. He said he dropped him off. Well, that was not the last place that Joey puts Jennifer and Adrianna. He says that the next day, his family went about life per usual, and that he got off work early. He was working in Franklin, Kentucky at the time, at a job site, which is maybe like 30, 40 minutes north of where he lived. And he said that Jennifer walked into his house. She was there to get a couple things, change of clothes and car seat and a few things. She asked for her income tax refund that morning. And he said, my parents aren't here to give it to you. You will have to come back. And she said, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. And that was the last place that he saw Jennifer. He did note in his details that Jennifer was driving the exact same car that picked her up the day before. And she was driving it. So whoever, I guess, picked her up the day before, according to him, would trust her enough to take their vehicle. And Adrianna was not with. So I always like to make it known that the last place Jennifer was known to be was their home. And the last person to see them was him. And as far as Adrianna, it would also be their home. And he and his parents were the last people to see them.
How was their relationship prior to her disappearance?
So Jennifer and Joey met in July of 2003, and I lived just outside of Las Vegas with my mom. And Jennifer and my other sister stayed here in Tennessee with some relatives of ours because they were older. Jennifer was 20, 21, and my other sister graduated high school. She was 18. And so they were old enough to say, yeah, I want to stay here, be close to my boyfriend and my other family members and friends. So they did, but I was still in school, so I was with my mom. And Jennifer stayed with my aunt at the time. Jennifer and Adrianna had a room there and a good support system from all our other family members. And my cousin Jeffrey is close in age to Jennifer. And so I guess he was hanging out with Joey at one point, said, hey, you want to come along, introduce Jennifer and Joey together. And they started dating in July, and quickly she started staying over, and she and Adrianna would stay in like this makeshift apartment, barn shed type deal on his parents' property in the summer because it was warm in Tennessee. It was pretty warm, but it had like a window area, and a fridge. And so they didn't go without air, but it didn't have running water or heat. So in about like October, I believe it was early October, my mom gets a call from Jennifer, very distraught. Joey had pulled a gun on Jennifer, Adrianna, and himself. I guess I don't know if he was under the influence because there were drugs involved, alcohol. So I don't know the full situation. And of course, I'd know more if I was able to talk to him. But Jennifer calls my mom and is upset about him pulling this gun. His mom, Cindy, drove Jennifer to Granny Wix's house. And so they were there, they broke up. My mom and I and my stepdad at the time moved back. Within like 2 weeks, we were back in Cross Plains. And Jennifer and Adrianna moved in with us. So that was kind of like a big red flag. And my mom said, okay, we're moving back. You don't need to be around that environment. You and the baby both don't need to be around drugs. You don't need to be around weapons, alcohol, things like that. You don't need to be living in this farm shed thing where people partying goes on all hours of the night. And so they moved into a basement apartment in our house. Finished, 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, nice little spot for them. And she and Joey kind of cut ties for the time being and started talking again over time, which happens a lot in relationships like theirs. So they started talking again. We didn't know that they were talking again. And one day in December, a couple days before Christmas, he shows up at our house. He wasn't supposed to be there. And he goes down to the basement where they lived and starts helping Jennifer collect all her things. Jennifer had decided to move back in with him. And so how I would describe their relationship was short and rocky for such a short relationship. There were a lot of red flags. There were a lot of things going on in that house that any parent, sister, grandparent would not want someone they love being around, much less a 2-year-old or a 21-year-old had no business being there. And then, of course, things continued to get even more rocky. When he was at our house that day, moving them out, my mom found out he was there and ended up confronting him. And my mom was asking him, like, how are you going to provide for my daughter and granddaughter? Like, they're moving in with you. Like, how are you going to be the man they need you to be? They can't be around these things. How are you going to provide for my daughter? And he just looked at my mom and said, you don't have a daughter anymore, and called her the B word. And I will never forget that day. He was about this far from her face. His eyes looked like he was just crazed. But yeah, we ended up calling the law that day, domestic type situation. He kicked down our front door. Very traumatic day for me. And Jennifer and Adriana went like the next month and a half or so without speaking to us. So we missed Christmas, New Year's, and Adriana's second birthday. Her 2-year-old birthday. Yeah, was there at home.
Now, when she disappeared, did any of her, was all her belongings there, or did she take anything?
Most of her things were with her there at the Benton house. As far as what we know she left behind is very difficult because we didn't have access to their home, right? But the first officer who took Joey's statement, Officer Campbell, the one that was let go, he remembers seeing the car seat whenever he took the missing persons report on Saturday, the 27th. So according to Joey, it was picked up by Jennifer on Friday. The officer remembers seeing it on Saturday. So there's another inconsistency in what was told.
Right.
As far as the baby bag, Jennifer wore glasses. That wasn't taken with her. She never, her social security number was never hit on ever again, hers or Adriana's. A lot of their clothing was returned to us. We had asked law enforcement to go there and make them collect belongings, and they could have looked through it for evidence or whatever. That was not done. Joey returned Jennifer's things to us in 4 black trash bags. All of it was just like garbage, returned to us. And we don't believe that everything was there. Like, my sister slept with a pillow that her grandmother made her. She sewed and quilted. That wasn't returned to us. Adriana's winter coat, little purple winter coat that you can see in some of her photos, her only winter coat was returned to us, which in March, it can get kind of cold at night. Sometimes it can snow. So she left without that. Her favorite toy was an Elmo doll stuffed toy. That was returned to us. So things that a mom would not leave behind. You have some kids, I've got some kids, I don't know about you. I wouldn't leave the house without those things. So they were all left behind and returned to us. My sister also really liked to write and journal. She would write letters, poetry, things like that. We didn't get any of those things.
Okay. Do you know if the police talked to his parents?
So we only have access in our records because we requested them on our own up front, my mom and my grandmother, to a few statements, a few police reports. And then after a certain period of time, you can't have access to those things anymore because the case is ongoing and active. And so we only have the original statement that was made by Joey. I assume that law enforcement talked to his parents. I do not know that for sure. I do know that they've talked to his parents recently.
Okay.
Originally, I can't say.
Okay. Now you said that he said that he took them to both the grocery store and the exile. Were there any surveillance footage of them there, or
No. Again, small town takes us a while to like get up to speed technology wise. I will say that the gas station had one camera that would have been able to get that footage. And by the time we reported Jennifer missing, Thursday is the last point of contact. Saturday reported missing, and then by the time law enforcement gets there, that tape had been recorded over.
okay?
So there's no surveillance footage. And if law enforcement ever reached out to the other gas station, they would have had to pass and drive past to see if they had footage. I don't know.
Okay. Oh, and you said she did not have a cell phone.
She did not.
Have a new word question here. I think all of them. Okay, that's answered. Good. Okay. Have you ever spoken to Joey?
When I was younger, whenever the girls first disappeared, um, I just had interactions with them. They were not very pleasant interactions. They were in 2008, whenever we were having a vigil in the cemetery, which is as close as we can get to their house where we could publicly be. And there were gunshots fired from their house that day. They came out to the fence. That is the only time that you will see news footage of he and his dad. If you look back in our news stories and whatnot. I don't remember that interaction with him, but some words were exchanged. You can see me doing it. And then this past year in 2024, I remember texting him whenever I first picked up the case in 2021, but I wasn't ready yet. I started investigating on my own. I started from the beginning, started questioning everyone, every family member, every friend, everyone that wanted to talk to me. And I wanted to do all of that before I talked to him. And so I wasn't ready. And so I didn't talk to him after he said, yes, this is me. And then in 2024, I spoke with him for the first time at the end of March, March 29th, I believe, was the first time. We had a pretty lengthy phone call this year. First time we spoke, I told him I only had 30 minutes to talk, but we ended up talking for about an hour. And it was very cordial. And I just kind of went about that conversation like, listen, I'm not accusing you, but I just want to hear what you have to say. And I don't remember anything because I don't. It's the truth. And I said, I just want to know what you have to say. Did you take her to the gas station? Did you take her to the food value? Did y'all get in a fight? Did you go on the picnic? She said y'all were going. And he confirmed all of those things on that call. He said yes. He said it wasn't technically a picnic. Jennifer had made some sandwiches for us, and we went to go talk. And we went to the barn, the little shed apartment, to have some privacy, and we talked. And he said, and then I just did what she asked me to. And he told me on that call that he was in the dark. He didn't know what plans she had, but I just did what she asked me to do. And he said, yes, I took her to the grocery store. I took her to the gas station. She did come back to my house the next day, and I said, I saw. And I said, okay, well, let's continue this conversation. He said, absolutely. Call me anytime. That was how the first phone call went. That is not how the second phone call went. I can get into that if you'd like me to.
Real quick, before we get too far ahead, I got
Okay,
one
okay.
question from a little bit. Was his home ever searched? Or his property or any of that?
So, yes and no. There's some things that families of the missing can't know about that law enforcement is doing. And so, for years and years and years, up until last year, we were unaware of some things that were done on their property. Some things we heard were done on their property from the Benton family or family members of theirs. Almost their entire family, like his dad's name is Joe Benton, and his brother and sister live like their properties back up, and then his parents' property backs up. So they all live right there together. And over time, we had made contact with some of them, so they would tell us that certain things had been done over time. Like the barn shed thing that they lived in, had been moved after so long after they were missing. And after it had been moved, completely dismantled and gutted, it had gotten searched at that point in time. Originally, after we reported them missing on Saturday, of course, the first officer came and took his statement on Saturday. And when that officer showed up, Joey told them, my parents aren't home right now. If you want him here, you got to come back with a warrant. So that was his response on Saturday. And so, whenever law enforcement follows up on that and comes back to their property, they were given permission to do a walkthrough. And so this is a welfare check, like missing persons. At this point, it's not treated like a homicide. Jennifer potentially just ran away or took a break or is with someone that we don't know, right? Or so we're being told by law enforcement and people that were pleading to go look for her. And so they come by on either Sunday or Monday. They did their first walkthrough. I want to say it was Sunday, the 28th, and they walk the property and through the house with one scent dog. There were no indications of Jennifer and Adrianna, which we find just really strange anyway, because they would walk through the woods to this barn shed. So like in Summer Wells's case or Sebastian Rogers, there are dogs that are brought on site and they'll follow a trail to where that person walked. Apparently there was none of that. So that was the first search. I'm putting it in air quotes because that's not a search, that's a walkthrough. Also 4 days after 4 days after we reported him missing. So if there were any indication of foul play, there are chances that it could be covered up by them. It could be cleaned up, drywall repairs, carpet patches, whatever. If you look into other cases, I mean, those signs are long gone 4 days later. So that was the first search, and then law enforcement did kind of what you call a grid search with the Tennessee Highway Patrol and some of their canines, because Washington County doesn't have their own canines and a lot of resources, so they source out. And so that was in 2006 that they did that. They did a grid search, so that's where everyone's standing about 3 feet apart. They've got metal prods sticking into the ground, and they're doing that back behind their house. My family has no records of what areas were searched, if it was done in its entirety, if it was done at all. We're unaware.
Sure.
Then, if he's going there, I'm sorry,
No, you're good.
was a search that my mom headed up and put together with, there's two. One of them she tried to put together, and it was going to be a search of his grandparents' property, which is a huge piece of property, about 50 something acres, that his family's property where they lived at the time backed up to, that they would have access to. We had local support with a search and rescue team in Arlington County, and once we got the grandparents' permission to search, it was also a permissive search, so no search warrants. had been issued at this point. Once we got their permission, his dad, Joe, ended up calling the sheriff and raising a bunch of cane and noise and going off on him, and the sheriff called that search off. So instead of aiding in the search and continuing this permissive search that we had, he let one of the last people to see Jennifer and Adrianna dictate the end to that search. My mom put a search together with Closs Kids Foundation in 2008. Great team. There were certain areas in Rocky County that were searched at that point. A bunch of foot searching done, not their property. At the end of their road, pieces of property at the end of their road was searched. Back behind the Exxon gas station was searched, and some other points in the city that Closs Kids recommended, but nothing came about from. In 2021, whenever I picked up the case, I really dove deep into it because I had made contact with members of his family that owned now the grandparents' property, because there had been a death in the family, and we had been invited to search these 51 acres again. So it's our second opportunity. We did get a search team out on those 51 acres, and when we got out there, we were met by Joey and his dad interfering with the search. We had to call the search team back because there was a lot of interference and aggression that day. Law enforcement was invited to help us with that search. We were declined. So no law enforcement was present until law enforcement was called on the other side, on the Benton family side, about us trespassing, which we were not. We had permission. And I will say that the cadaver dogs that were out there, that were only trained on human cadaver, some were trained in different ways, did hit on human remains in the woods that day. At that point, we begged and pleaded law enforcement to come out and search this specific spot after we ran ground penetrating radar and got the recommendation of them to bring in law enforcement. They declined. They said to dig it up. So we did with a backhoe, and nothing was found that day. No soil tests were done. No further forensic testing, nothing at that point in time. So we moved on to 2024. Whenever I made contact with Joey, there was a raid at his family's home on the 20-year anniversary of the day we reported them missing, March 27th of this past year. And we thought it was Jennifer and Adrianna. So this was at their personal residence, which is about 6 acres. And my family dropped everything that we were doing, showed up outside their house. There's TBI, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, FBI, ATF, Robertson County.
Wow.
Everyone was there that day, where they found a ton of illegal weapons and explosive materials on their property. And his dad was a convicted felon at this point because of, which will probably come as no surprise, kidnapping charges and assault charges from a couple years prior. And so when they found these weapons that he was not supposed to be in possession of, he received about 42 charges of those illegal weapons and explosive materials, on top of one charge of sexual exploitation of a minor. And I can get into that too, if y'all want to get into that, because at the time there was a lot of speculation that that minor could potentially be Adrianna. And so, if you remember me earlier in the interview, I said she'd been at the ER. She was having trouble going pee. Her diagnosis was vaginitis. And in young 2-year-old little girls, it can happen, but it's not common. And that's what the nurses at the ER told her that. And the pediatrician said at her follow-up appointment that it could also be from wearing her wet diaper too long, things like that. So whenever his dad received this charge, there was a lot of speculation around that from us too. And then local media got got a hold of some support documents, and it was let out that there was a photograph that was found, and the description of the photograph was a 20-year-old photograph, which even further made everyone believe that it was Adrian. Well, my family, being in contact with members of the Benton family, were made aware that it was not a photo of Adriana. And of course, that gives us some relief, but we also believe that there's still a possibility, because if he was doing that to someone else, he was doing that to her. So because of all of these charges and things going on with his dad, our case, because it's so widely known in the area and tied to their family in a way, because that was the last place that they were seen. Of course, he's facing charges with all of these other things, and so we made an appointment with the district attorney, and we said, look, he's going to be up with these charges. We want information about our case. We want answers about Jennifer and Adrian, and we want to know where they're at. Can we use this in any way? And so the district attorney, TBI, Robertson County, met with our family a few times. Joey showed up at one of those meetings and apparently told them everything that happened on March 24th, 2004. And that was whenever his story changed from the gas station and the food value, and I just dropped them off, and I don't know where they are, to here's what happened that day in my life for 20 years. And so that phone call, I believe, was on April 9th in 2024. And my mom met with him in person. He said he wanted to tell her face to face. And she met with him in person, and I was on the phone. And he sat right across from her and said whenever he got home from work that day, that Jennifer and Adriana were dead. So that is about as far what he's told us as what at this time that I can release, because there's a few reasons. And that's because, one, I don't believe him. I think that some of his statements may be self-serving. And I think that there's a little truth in every lie, if you've ever heard that statement before. I think that he was trying to help us and help himself. And I think that if I say too much about what he said, that it could potentially help him and hurt our prosecution. So yeah, my family's main goal has always been find Jennifer and Adriana, number one. If we never find out what happened to Jennifer and Adriana, which is likely, we'll never find out what happened, even if we find them.
Right.
But our main goal is just to bring them home and get that closure. And the search question is how I got here. There were some searches after he came forward and spoke with the DA and law enforcement this year. There were some locations that were disclosed of where Jennifer and Adriana's remains could possibly be. And they went out to that property over 10 times searching for Jennifer and Adriana, and they were not successful. And so we ended 2024. It was a big year for our family and our case, but we ended without them, but a lot closer than we've ever been.
Now, do you have a page set up for the girls that we can follow this and encourage everybody else to join with you and follow as well?
Yeah, social media is huge for missing persons cases. I mean, you all do a good job at that and helping families get their loved ones' faces out there. It's super important. Awareness is huge in these cases, especially recent cases where they could potentially still be out there. Awareness in the older cases is also very important for a different reason. That is to keep the continued applied pressure on the individuals responsible, on law enforcement, and just let them not be forgotten. That's really big for people who have missing loved ones, because we're stuck in 2004 still to this day. And we think about that day every day. And where other people don't want to, and maybe y'all think about it, it's top of mind for y'all. Other people can easily forget and move on when we can. And so, yes, we have a page. I run it personally with my mom. It's called Justice for Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. That's my Facebook page. And I'm on it every single day. I respond personally to every comment, to every message, and I will forever do that. And then I have an Instagram page, which is Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. It's at Jennifer and Adrianna Wix. And I have a TikTok, but I'm not good at it yet. And yeah, just please continue to share for us, because we're not stopping.
Thank
You are reaching out currently to other missing families of the missing in Tennessee.
Right.
Would you like to touch on that a little bit?
Yes. I haven't gotten very far with this yet, and I have no idea what I'm doing. But in the position that I am, we've reached 20 years in our case. If we're not going to find Jennifer and Adrianna, I want to do something in their honor, to help other people's families. And this past year, with some of the admissions that we've had about where they are and things that happened that day, unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done about what we're being told. So because of that, that was very disheartening for my family. It was very discouraging, almost in a sense that justice will never be served for my family. And if that's going to be the case, I'm going to make sure that justice gets served for other people's families. And in Tennessee, unfortunately, we have a reputation. I know some other states do too. But in Tennessee, we need some laws changed around missing persons cases, and statutes of limitation need to be changed. There are some laws regarding search warrants. If a case goes a certain amount of time and becomes cold, there are no cold case units in Tennessee. There's no one actively working on cases unless a lead comes in. And it shouldn't be on us, the family, or y'all advocates, to continue pressing for answers in cases. There should be someone working on our behalf and checks and balances in place to make sure that they actually are. So there are some things that I want to work on, and I need the other family members' support. And I know whenever their loved ones just go missing, that's difficult for them to step away from that search and that fight to work on things that can happen in the future. But if I can gain their support and collaborate, then I think that we can get these laws changed. And I think we can make some changes going forward. So if they would please reach out to me
On the page, right?
on our page, you can reach out to me personally too. My name's Casey Robinson. Easy to find.
Awesome.
Thank you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and giving me a voice of it. I appreciate you.
Thank you.